a few things we're gonna talk about outside of it.
Oh, it's time to start, you mean?
It's 1 o'clock, yeah, but we're waiting on a couple people, so we can,
Yeah, so I mean, well, the way I was thinking that you guys have proposals, right?
Yeah.
So, I do think that we should reserve the last 20 minutes, of this session to, discuss how, the last bargaining session ended. I think that's worth, going over. But I don't want to derail this meeting, so, if you guys want to present your proposals, and then, we have one remaining proposal, and then we have other kind of clarifying, questions that we want to ask, but
yeah.
if there's some kind of minor stuff you want to ask first.
Yeah, we took-
can get that out of the
On
way.
updates from last week, I asked you about the data that UF owes us from January.
Mhm.
And then the discussion on outside of UF work being sent to departments, you said you check up on both of those. So-
Right, so I actually met with Brent in Class and Comp. And he's in the process, he actually sent me a mock-up file of what it was. Actually, he sent it to me yesterday afternoon. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but
Okay,
yeah, we're preparing that. We're hopefully gonna have that to you ASAP.
okay, so sometime in the next week, you're
Yeah.
thinking, okay. And then do you have anything on getting information to these departments about clarifying to them that grad students are allowed to work outside the university?
Yeah, I'll put something out through probably through the provost office. They have like an associate dean meeting, and my recommendation to my contact in that office is gonna be that gets shared at that meeting. That's the way that I think it'll be best to be served. And I think those happen on Mondays or Tuesdays. Chris meets with them. I think he meets with them on Mondays, so.
Okay, so sometime in the next week as well, we should.
I don't know if it'll be the next week, but my suggestion is the next time they have that meeting, that
Okay.
is where I'm recommending that information be shared.
Okay. I'll keep checking up and
Okay.
we'll get updates, but I appreciate you working those and getting progress on them. Push the owl, you know?
Lengthy, I guess.
We haven't heard that.
5, 8, 20, 21. Did you hear back from Becky?
Me?
Yeah, I thought you said.
Oh, no, I
Oh,
don't have
okay.
her, I guess I could email her.
That's all right,
Want me to email her?
if you wouldn't mind.
Trying to find her email address, for some reason it's not
It's
popping
not
up.
popping up.
I think it's just being old,
I think it's Behold.
there it is.
She's not in the waiting room, is she?
I know.
No, we're keeping an eye on her.
So, are we
I
waiting on
guess
something?
It's being.
We're waiting for Becky, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're good on our end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We're
I'm just gonna find out definitively if she's coming or not.
You wanna just send us your proposals in the meantime?
Sure.
It has to take a little time.
Five, 20, 21, 22. She's hopping on right now.
I've got the thing open, so I'll accept her as soon as she's in.
8.
8, 20, 21, 22. There's Dr. Travis, okay. Depending on time, we actually have probably, we have one more than that, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to get through all these. So I sent the first 5. If we have time, I know you guys have one and then there's some other stuff you wanna talk about. So.
Sure. All right.
If
Well,
everyone.
what would you like to start with?
We'll start with number 5. There is one, it should be fixed in what I sent you. There is one, I printed it out when I missed an edit, so you're gonna see a line through 2 words on here. So just, no, it's right on the first page.
And Becky has joined us in the call.
Oh, perfect. Fantastic.
January more.
Okay, so I think on 5, I think we're pretty close. In much of the words, I think there's really probably one topic that we probably are gonna go back and forth on maybe, but we wanna kind of lay out where we are. I think we're good on the first section. That is, we've come back and forth about, it's the sentence at the beginning that says, should no such evaluation be conducted for a particular appointment term, the employee shall be treated as though they successfully met employment expectations of the supervisor for that appointment term. I know we had some minor edits to that back and forth, but I think that sentence has stayed relatively the same for the past couple of times going back and forth.
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, we can put a check by that one.
Okay.
Let's go, there's nothing on the back page that's changed. So when we go down to 5.2A, employees who demonstrate deficiencies in their performance. I know we've gone back and forth about may and must. So we would like to see may be offered a performance improvement plan. Such plans do not create a renewal beyond those rights described in Article 4. Now, we had some conversation about this last time. We think that sentence, which I think that you guys are okay with, such plans do not create a right of renewal beyond, and including the word must, we don't think those 2 sentences are congruent. You can't have it say must and it doesn't create a right, because if it's must and then we don't do it, then it does create a right. So we think that may is the preferred language there, again, in the context of everything that we talked about with respect to Article 4 and the fact that we interpret the renewal process to be absolute and not contingent upon doing a PIP. Now, I realize that we have multiple proposals going back and forth on those topics, but that's where we are.
Okay.
Following the steps given in a PIP is not required by the employee. We don't have a problem with that. A PIP must contain, the only thing that we took out was misconduct. Because if it's performance improvement, we really don't think we would be interested in doing a performance improvement plan for misconduct. We would want to do it for performance deficiencies. So, the rest of it's there. I mean, I don't think any of that is strikingly new language. I don't think it's strikingly new concepts. We've kind of talked back and forth about it. But I think that's where we are and sort of the reason why.
Okay. Any question? I think,
No,
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I know I know Article 4 changes are also going like hand in hand with this. So
Right.
we'll need some time to look it over, but I think
So
we're.
so this last part, that is point C, or is it supposed to be
It's
part of
C.
6? Okay.
No, yeah, cause it's just, yeah.
Yeah, the formatting continues to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll,
Like I
we'll
said,
fix it one day.
I will just literally, I'm just gonna type it from
Yeah.
a fresh Word document
Yeah.
and. there's
Yeah,
no other way
honestly,
to do
like
it.
we don't even really need to get too fancy with the bullet points or anything, like
Yeah.
just tab. and-
Default.
Yeah,
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 the-
yeah.
Default.
The default numbering system.
I know in some
will be great.
places it's like A dot too, I think, and like
Yeah.
different number, yeah.
So the thing that actually drives me the most crazy is it has, in some paragraphs, I don't know why, but some of them have custom spacing between letters and
Yeah.
between words.
Right.
Like it'll automatically like crazy justify. I don't know why it does that. It's a really old file though, so it's time to just read it.
Right, yeah, but like I said, I think.
Okay, so let's go to 8. So I think we had an opportunity to talk about 8, and I think for the most part, we're probably closer on 8 than we were on any of the other stuff. So I think we may be ready to for the most part, be done with it.
Can we have one more?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we had a lot of opportunity to discuss it. Back in 8.1, we're okay to return to putting sister and brother back in there. We had a lot of conversations about that. Which is the way it currently is. So it looks like it's new language. It's not, it's just re-putting in what we previously had recommended striking. And then if you go down to, you had a suggestion in 8.3, which was grammatical pronoun based. We're fine with that. Going down to F under 8.3 F 1. We had suggested last time, I don't think this is a new suggestion in C, that it be clear that the extension is unpaid. That's just that's a clarifying word. I don't think that's the first time we've seen that. We're gonna be okay under F1 of making the exceptions for A3, A1, 2, and 3. So we had some back and forth about making an exception for birth, adoption, and surrogacy.
Right.
For the timeline requirement on the front end of employment. So at this point, we're willing to make that concession. And we're good with that. Down in unpaid leave, I don't think we made any fresh changes to this. This was stuff that we had, you can see it's multiple colors. We went back and forth several times on 8.4 with respect to unpaid leave. This is one of the first things we tackled all the way back when we started because we had inadvertently overwritten this part of the contract. So I don't think there's any, anything new to highlight, but obviously take a look at it. B, we were okay with the 8, which I believe was we had said 6. I believe you countered with 8. We're good with the 8. And then I know in D, we had gone back and forth about how we count the rolling calendar for whether or not you are, able to get another unpaid. And I think what we had settled on, or we suggested as a final sort of thing, was that you can request an extension of the unpaid leave through the end of the term in which the unpaid leave started. And then E, I think, the extensions, we can grant or deny them. We retain the ability to grant or deny them, which would allow you to ask for another extension, basically. So I don't think there's really anything left on that one that's.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's been a while, so was there something new added here, or is it just like a change in the language of D?
No, I don't think that's new.
Okay.
I'm just reviewing because it's been a long time
Yeah, I
since
know,
we
it's
talked
been a
about
while,
that.
7 years.
We haven't even really talked about or focused on that section because last time we were talking more about F above and, for the birth issues. So
Right.
like I said, I was just sort of talking back through where we've been on going back and
Yeah, I
forth
think
on the
this is-
article.
Yeah, I think this is.
I think we're
something
pretty
that we added.
close
Yeah.
on
I think
this
so.
one. So, it's good to
Okay.
sort of resolve maybe, hopefully what are the last outstanding issues on
I
an
only
article?
only have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think the first one.
Yeah, where you set the change with the pronouns,
That's-
that, we love that, but then you rejected sibling and stuck with sister and brother. What's the reasoning behind that?
Because that matches all the other language we have for this provision for the other groups. We would rather it be consistent, because I went back and checked the way we have it listed for all the other employee groups matches this original language. So we would rather just have it match.
But wouldn't it be better to like switching the pronouns? All the pronouns probably at one point matched on his or her. And to be fully inclusive and make sure that we're not like excluding trans people.
So what do you want to put in 8.3 instead of there?
Just siblings.
Oh,
so that-
Oh,
8.1.
sibling in
Yeah.
8.1A, okay.
Yeah.
They're not identifying as their brother, they're still covered. It's the same reasoning behind switching pronouns.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
expand our coverage or anything.
So by that definition, would you want us to change mother and father to parent?
Yeah, that's.
What I'm saying is I don't want to do this multiple
Yeah,
times.
that-
I
Like,
think that makes
That's a good
sense,
one.
yeah.
I'm not suggesting I'm asking if that's what your interest would be. We can,
I
think it would make
we
sense,
can talk
yeah.
about that.
I mean,
Parent,
yeah,
guardian.
parent, guardian, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, guardian is a whole different,
Yeah,
guardian is a different legal
Parent.
status, yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're fighting for an extension, but switching
Yeah.
mother and father with parent would just. be-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not proposing, I'm just saying it would seem that,
Mhm.
why would
Yeah.
that be any different
Yeah.
if that's what you're gonna
Right, right,
recommend?
right.
I think we agree with that.
Yeah.
You can make the
Just like
changes
spouses
that
and
when
say
you
husband
guys
or wife.
respond
Yeah,
to
when
it,
you
just,
respond.
if you wanna go through and just confirm.
We'll do.
Yeah, we'll do that, yeah.
I have a clarifying for 8.4A. This purple
8.4,
text, the second half paragraph is new language.
8.4A.
8.4A, yes.
The pink.
Yeah, that, because I'm looking at your last proposal, I think, from November. And this second half paragraph was not there.
I don't
In
think
case
this,
of
I don't think this was, I didn't think
Except
this
in
was
the case
new.
of a medical, in the case of, this might have been in one of our
Yeah.
proposals,
Was
we
it?
gave back that they
Okay, I
accepted.
might have.
Because
missed
the
it.
10 days thing is impossible for medical emergency.
Okay, I'm trying to keep track of what has been added
Well,
where, because it's a bit
Yeah,
confusing.
no, I
with
think,
colors.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
think this is from the last proposal for Article 8, I think from us had this language and, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that was on February
Yeah, that's from
first.
Hannah.
Yeah,
That's-
that's
Okay.
from Anna, yeah, so
Yeah.
I think we're good on that.
okay.
All right, so that's 8. Okay, we're going faster. We're going through this faster than I thought we would.
Perfect.
All right, Article 20. All right. So we had quite a bit of conversation last time about, there's, the concept would be that we talked a lot about reasonability, we talked about good faith concerns, and I believe that this is our attempt to respond to the interest of GAU in there not being a situation whereby somebody can bring a concern or a complaint and then we just basically ignore it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that was the concern that we sort of heard you articulate. So what we're suggesting we put here is we'll be happy to take out the word reasonable because we know that that seemed to be sort of the hang up of the test of reasonability. And instead we've added the following. Whenever a bargaining unit employee reports a condition that they feel represents a potential violation of safety or health rules and regulations, the appropriate administrator shall, and then we're suggesting to insert, review the complaint and assess whether or not a formal investigation is warranted. The supervisor shall notify the employee of the decision to conduct or not such a formal investigation in a timely manner. The supervisor may also choose to take action to address the matter without conducting a formal investigation. UFF-GAU may request a consultation meeting regarding any such complaint, including to discuss why a formal investigation was not conducted. Upon conclusion of an investigation, the appropriate administrator shall inform the good employee of the findings, including any actions. We would like to keep the phrase good faith, however. So we're willing to sort of concede reasonability with sort of an outline of the process. Because quite frankly, I think oftentimes, depending on the situation, the supervisor choosing to take some action to ameliorate the concern can happen without needing to conduct a formal investigation. In other words,
So here the supervisor means the GA supervisor or the university administrator who's in charge of the complaint.
it would ultimately be the supervisor of, if the employee brings it to their supervisor, they would have to facilitate. I mean, they're gonna have to facilitate whatever.
So supervisor here means the employee's supervisor.
Correct.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they necessarily conduct it. They may be directed, they may hand it off, they may have to get somebody else to do the investigation if they're not able to.
Right, so I'm just wondering that if the unsafe conditions are due to the negligence of the supervisor, then they would not be in charge of investigating themselves, right? Is that?
I didn't narrowly construe the complaint to be that way, but yeah, I understand. Go
The
ahead.
prior sentence says the appropriate administrator shall
Right.
review the complaint, so that could potentially be like HR or Robert, depending on like what the unsafe condition might be,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah,
so in that case, then it wouldn't be the supervisor necessarily notifying the employee who.
no, the supervisor is still gonna hold the responsibility to communicate it, and that's the way we wrote it. The supervisor shall notify the employee of the decision. But
Okay.
it's the appropriate administrator, like Olivia said, is going to assess whether or not a formal investigation.
Is that what the current process is?
It's not, go ahead.
Well, you can answer the question. You're doing a back and forth.
What's the current process?
I don't think the current process is formalized in the contract.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my
But what
understanding.
does happen
Practically, I mean, I
before?
think practically this is
Okay.
what happens.
Okay. And in your experience, do frivolous accusations of unsafe conditions come up?
I think it absolutely could. It's absolutely possible.
But has it happened in your time here?
I wouldn't say necessarily frivolous.
Uh,
In the last 13 months, I haven't seen like a spike in frivolous complaints, no.
so what is like the motivating, kind of? What is motivating this specific?
So I think with the way that it was, the way that it was suggested it be written, without controlling for reasonability of the complaint
Mhm.
and without controlling for the fact that an investigation may be conducted. By that language, GAU would have a right to grieve if we didn't conduct an investigation, even in the case of a complaint that was basically absurd.
Mhm.
We would still be contractually bound to conduct an investigation irrespective of any qualifying consideration of the nature of the concern, the complaint, the location, the environment, the people involved. We wouldn't be able to do any sort of, in the strictest sense of the way it's written, we wouldn't be able to do any qualification or triage of that complaint. We would just immediately have to launch into an investigation.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, but would it, if it was like an obviously, ridiculous complaint, then wouldn't it be possible to just like open an investigation and then like within a few minutes decide that,
Well, this is what we were discussing
Uh-huh.
2 weeks ago, but
Yeah.
investigations at the university, that's kind of like the
A
term
formal
of science.
process,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like,
okay.
we have investigators, they do notices, there's like a whole, so we don't have probably like enough investigators to do every single thing that comes up. So this is not to say that they would never do it, but
Right.
this kind of allows for, I think, and frankly, our investigation can take a long time. So like if there's an actual safety issue, we should probably try to resolve it sooner rather than.
Right,
later.
yeah.
So this, I think, is a little bit more, I think, accurately reflects what probably happens and what would probably be of everyone's best interest.
So
I think-
there's no process that just, where they can just basically write it up, the formal investigation, this was an absurd complaint and that's it, and like submit it quickly? Like, it has to go through like the whole process?
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, I think Robert was saying last
Yeah.
time, like, our HR department gets lots and lots and lots of complaints.
Right,
And then about, not saying safety issues,
Yeah.
but just about things in general.
Right.
And so like, they have to kind of triage those and decide like
right, okay.
what is or isn't gonna be investigated. And then when something is, then it goes through the whole
So it's
investigation.
gonna bloat it
process.
up and, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
I think this language is definitely preferable, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Last time we talked, you mentioned like this idea that maybe, while it wasn't like an investigation, it's like professionals that UF employees have like researched an issue and have like reports
Mhm.
that aren't necessarily the investigatory report, but they're relevant, and that would be another instance in which like, why would we do an investigation? We have this, it's not called an investigation, but
Right.
it tells us everything. No,
Right.
and then I also mentioned, I could see it being absurd if like one person reports something and triggers an investigation, and then like the next year, a second one gets triggered and they're all like redundant and stuff like that. I can imagine where the wording of this like could create these like unnecessary issues. I just wonder with the way that you worded it, like specifically UFFGAU may request a consultation meeting regarding any such complaint, including to discuss why a formal investigation was not conducted.
Right.
If you're worried about this like obvious redundancy or frivolousness or unreasonableness, wouldn't it be safe to say that UFGAU may agree that investigation is not required? Like, you've made it so that the decision is conducted unilaterally, and then we can request to discuss why it was not conducted, but
Right.
that decision was made unilaterally.
Yes.
We could be like reasonable and see that like, oh, there is this report that clearly spells out what happened, or yeah, this is redundant to an investigation that happened last year or something, and nothing's fundamentally changed. In those cases, GAU would like be willing to be like, okay, yeah, we don't need to do another one. So we could be kind of the reasonable party that says, yeah, we don't need this investigation to make it so unilaterally
So
done
it's not
on
fully,
your
you know,
side.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we just talk with you after the decision is made. Seems like not ideal.
Yeah,
as a solution.
I see what you're saying. I think the problem that from our perspective is the fact that we own 100% of the liability and responsibility for maintaining a safe and orderly campus. that's not gonna be a responsibility we're gonna abrogate to, we're not gonna delegate that away, even in a slice or a piece, to GAU. So, ultimately, just because this says we may or may not conduct an investigation, this doesn't offer us any protection against the liability that may be incurred if we fail to maintain a safe campus.
Mhm.
So I mean, that remains entirely our responsibility.
Right, and if you put in a clause that says GAU may, if GAU agrees with the university that no investigation is necessary, this investigation need not occur. That sentence could never result in you taking on more liability, because we would be agreeing with you that an investigation is not
We
necessary.
will always own 100% of the liability, whether or not we
Exactly.
investigate it.
So why'd you bring up the liability thing, like delegating liability or decision-making about liability
I understand what you're saying.
to us? Where our decision in that situation would never increase or.
Right. So I think I'll put it in different terms. I believe that based on what you had shared last time, I do believe if you want to be given an explanation, you want to understand why we didn't do it. I understand that interest and I can understand why you're like, hey, we heard these complaints, these people brought this forward. You didn't even do an I'm sort of pantomiming here. You didn't even do an investigation. That's complete. We think that's unreasonable. We want to know why you didn't do an investigation. And we would have to say, okay, look, here's what you need to understand. You didn't necessarily understand this, you didn't understand that, we've already done this, we've already done that, so on and so forth. This is why we didn't do it, as opposed to having a conversation where you say, well, we don't agree, now go do the investigation anyway, even though you decided not to. We're not willing to go to that space. We don't believe we need to get you to say, we agree. But I do believe if in this case, we're willing to say, you're owed a conversation to explain why we didn't do one.
Okay, I think, yeah, I mean, I think, this language is definitely more addressing our concerns than what the previous proposal was. So I think we will, we'll definitely, take this into consideration.
Yeah.
It's definitely a better start than the previous, proposal.
Yeah, I mean, again, we attempted to it. You had said, well, draw something up you think may address it. That's what we attempted to do.
you're playing.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
And then the 20.8 is, I think that should read exactly what we've already agreed to. In the
Mhm.
previous MOU, you shouldn't see any changes. If you see changes, please let me know, but there shouldn't be any there.
Probably the same as the last.
It should be. I mean, the intention is that that's the same. Okay, let's move on to 21. Okay, so this is not stapled, but it's multiple pages, so I'm gonna hand them to you individually. Yeah, next row. Okay. Okay, discipline. So on this first part here, we had some back and forth conversation about 21.1A. I believe the crossed out language here, Brandon, that you had mentioned was that directly affects the interest of the university.
Yeah.
And we've kind of gone back and forth about that.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we believe addresses that already that's in the current contract language is if you look down at B, activities that fall outside the scope of the employment shall constitute misconduct only if such activities adversely affect the legitimate and compelling interests of the university. So, we believe that to the extent that the union appears to be interested in understandably insulating their members and the employees from being disciplined for things that don't have anything to do with their employment. We understand that. I mean, I think we acknowledge that. I think our interest is for things that are directly related to your job. We are not interested in inserting another test of whether or not it matters. In other words, if it's something that's clearly within your job description, we don't want to have to also then say, this is how that particular component of your position description directly affects the interests of the university. Because the way this is written, we believe that would have to be another hurdle that we would have to overcome prior to being able to discipline someone. And we don't think we're not interested in that secondary test. We think that B offers an appropriate amount of insulation from something that's not related to your job that you don't believe you should be disciplined for. We're acknowledging that.
Okay.
Down in C, the university retains the right to discipline employees with just cause. The university retains the right to impose disciplinary action other than termination, including but not limited to suspension, with or without pay, provided that the punishment is appropriate to the degree of misconduct. The degree of discipline may be related to behavior or action subject to discipline. I think the only change that you're gonna see in there is, what we've crossed out, and I don't know if we crossed out this time or the previous time.
This was the
Brandon.
previous time.
It was the previous time,
Yeah.
okay,
So I think the language is the same.
I think that was-
yeah,
I don't think we
Yeah,
changed
I
it
don't-
from their last.
yeah.
yeah, we changed it from
Okay.
our last proposal.
Okay.
I don't know, I should have probably made this change before, changed oral to verbal, it's really a verbal reprimand.
Yeah,
21.2, I believe the change, from progressive discipline back to disciplinary actions, back to progressive discipline was us.
yeah,
We recommend, I mean, the term progressive discipline is actually it's a term that's in quotation marks, like progressive discipline is actually it's a philosophical approach to the way that you administratively discipline an employee in terms of the fact that it's supposed to start out minor and get progressively more intense. We think it's important to include that.
I think it was less progressive last. time.
It was,
Yeah.
but I want to acknowledge the
Yeah.
fact that we have had significant conversation about
Yeah,
that term.
right. Okay.
Outlined below are the steps for progressive discipline. The university can sip steps. The B, I think we've agreed to what we have in B, the employee must be properly informed of any disciplinary action as described in 21.4. I think
Yeah.
we're okay with that. The sanctions for disciplinary actions that may be imposed on an employee include, you had suggested striking may include but are not limited to the following. And
Yes.
we had kind of hemmed and hawed about that, but I think we
Yeah.
are, with the other changes, and although they're relatively minor in here, I think we're ready to say okay to that. And that, so these would be the only specific steps that would be in there and described as discipline. Written reprimand containing
Okay.
description of the misconduct, or incompetence. We added incompetence back in. We do think it's relevant
Right.
to include that.
Okay.
Um,
Was there not any other actions that you considered adding? I was just curious.
We think this is probably sufficient.
Okay.
We spent quite a bit of time kind of talking about it and kicking it back and forth. I think that
Okay.
we're okay with it as it's written there.
Okay.
Did I miss any part of that? Are we good? Okay. 21.3 investigation. So we know we had a lot of conversation about this. So here's what I did. I went back and actually changed the specific language. And one of the reasons that I changed the language is I don't want to inadvertently create another form of leave. The term administrative leave is already a specific term that's contemplated in UF regulations. Rather than calling it something else, we would rather use that term specifically.
Okay.
I did put the reference there if you want to go ahead and take a look.
So instead of investigatory leave, which it
Correct,
was
which-
It's
before.
essentially what,
Okay.
That's what it is.
that's, what
Okay.
employees are placed on during an investigation,
Right.
so.
And I put in the comment there, if you want to go ahead and take a look at it, it's 1.201. So you can go ahead and see where the reference there.
And that's something that comes from the HR department, so the only people who can approve administrative leave is like the vice president of HR, so it's not like a random supervisor can just like put somebody on administrative leave, so. I think keeping it consistent with what we already have regulation on.
Is it only the vice president?
The,
It's just, I think is
the
it AVP?
AVP of HR.
Yeah.
Maybe by VP of HR or their designee, it says in the regulation,
Okay.
but yeah, my point just being like,
Right.
it's regulated.
Yeah.
As if we create a new type of leave,
Right.
then there's,
Rather than
you
having,
have to create a whole bunch of other new kind of
right.
provisions about how it's implemented.
The paid leave is not subject to the revisions in Article 8. Employees must be provided written notice at the time they are placed on administrative leave. So this was something that I'm not sure if your intention in your last proposal was the way that I read it. I did kind of mention it in a comment.
So, no, we discussed that in 21.4, there was some language in there that didn't apply to the administrative leave now.
Right,
And that it could create some issues,
Right.
So I just mentioned that. This putting some of that under as bullet points underneath 21.3. To say notification shall include, A, B, and C, and then, just remove whatever. is what we talked about last
Right,
time.
so I did put the sentence, employees must be provided written notice at the time they were placed on administrative
Yeah.
leave. If there's something specific that you think that you want to
Right.
see in there, I mean, let us know
Okay.
what is specific, that you would want to be included. Oftentimes I will say that, the amount of specific detail that's provided when we place somebody on administrative leave, normally there's a general description about the allegation or about the, whatever the employee has been alleged to have done. It's normally not terribly verbose. It doesn't give all kinds of detail. It doesn't give a lot of documentation. It basically says,
Right.
look, this is the accusation. We'll let you know when we have to contact you for an investigatory interview.
Okay.
I just had a question about, and I wasn't here when Brandon, proposed this, so maybe this has already been talked about. But, in Brandon's, it was that they're not subject to limitations outlined in the article, and yours is, this
It's tough to
says
see
still
which
not
one is-
subject.
Yeah, no, it says this paid leave is not subject to the provisions in Article 8, so
Gotcha,
I had language separate from paid leave as outlined, and they just removed that and just put in Article 8.
So they still aren't subject. It's
Yeah, the
still-
paid leave is
Yeah,
not subject to
okay,
provisions
good.
in Article 8, yes,
Understood.
yeah. So it's just separate
It's
administrative.
a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's not counted against your 8 weeks. It's not,
You're
you
not
don't,
choosing to get put on.
Yeah.
Right,
you have to get medical certification. There's no approval process.
right, okay, so yeah, that one's still in there.
Would they have Gator grad care?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What do you mean?
Well,
Like,
cause it's
if
investigatory
they're
paid leave, I
unpaid
think.
Administrative leave, would they have Gator grad?
Yeah, it doesn't stop your benefits.
Yeah.
You still have access to your benefits. I mean, you're basically because you're in a paid status
Mhm.
and it's
being-
non-disciplinary, so you
Yeah.
still get access to whatever benefits you had before you went out on that leave.
Okay.
All right, 21.4. A, contain descriptions of the misconduct or incompetence. We added that back in, that
Right,
led
the
to the disciplinary action,
incompetence,
which we're good with that.
Okay.
And I believe that the length of the disciplinary action, if applicable, I believe that was your suggestion. We're okay with that. Be delivered in person through the United States mail using first-class postage paid on, I mean, the way that it's
Yeah.
gonna be notified, or the official email, I think we're good with that.
Okay,
The only thing, and I don't think we rejected this, we're not rejecting this now, you saw us previously direct this,
Right.
was to specifically include the steps on how to file a grievance. I mean, we don't think that we actually have to outline the steps of how to file a grievance in there. We don't think
Right.
that's necessary. We do have to have a statement that if they want to contest it, that they have to file a grievance.
that's already included.
Well, we're agreeing, that's an E. I mean,
Oh.
that's already here.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so, I mean, we feel providing notice is
CE,
enough, but to
okay.
also outline, and by the way, if you want to do it, we don't.
Right,
need to
right,
do
right.
that.
Okay, I see.
Go ahead.
I know this is our language, so I'm sorry, but I just want to point out, I've heard that when people get disciplinary action, sometimes, their Gator grad, like their login gets shut down. So if it's going to their email, like if we use the word "or" to the employee's official university email, they might not actually receive the notice. It would be
Oh, they-
preferable if it was hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, typically HR is they're aware of whether or not someone's Gator link is being disabled, so they're cognizant of that and they would not send something to them via email, but I think,
I know of a person, and it wasn't at the notice of discipline phase, it was at a later phase.
Oh,
But
okay.
at a later phase, they missed important, like,
Okay.
information regarding the disciplinary
I don't
proceedings.
think it would be a problem to do both.
Okay,
But
let me check against what, okay, Robert's not here,
Oh,
because
yeah,
he
let's
knows that
confirm
back and
with
forth.
Robert, yeah.
I'll check with Robert. All right, down in 21.5, I don't think this is substantively different. I mean, we agreed to sort of include a sentence that clarifies exactly what the EAP is.
Yeah,
And that while, participating it is confidential, if you are mandated to go and you choose not to, that is a disciplinable event. In other words, we don't get access to whatever your information is, but if we're like, hey, we feel like you're having this issue or you're having this problem, we'd literally like you to go we'd really like you to go talk to somebody, you're being mandated to do that. And you're like, no, I won't go. Well, we don't care what happens at the session, but we really want you to engage with this process. If you choose not to do it, then we're going to discipline you for not doing it. So, but I don't think that's anything substantively different than what we've already discussed.
But that is a new addition to, like, employee assistance, could it be mandated before this addition?
I think the language before,
Basically, yeah, the current contract language is however, failure to cooperate in an EAP may serve as a.
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
so
not
it,
new.
it's, yeah.
Okay, So
yeah,
actually,
it's
this
not new.
is the current. contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just with the other edits, it just
Yeah.
comes out of edit. Yeah, really, the only line being added is just the explanation of what the EAP is.
Got it.
And that's, and I think we've already kind
Yeah,
of
and we,
discussed that.
and we, I think, yeah, we're understanding on that.
All right, so the last one, canceled was misspelled. I think you guys got that one.
Yeah.
So the last one, and we know that this one is one we spent a lot of time talking about. We're just not interested in specifically including the 21.8. And I actually invite you to go ahead and check out the exact language that's in the BOG regulation, which I've given you the reference for if you'd like. Which states, and I put the provision in here for you to review on your own and evaluate. University employees who violate, and there's the reference, are subject to the university established disciplinary actions, which must include disciplinary actions up to and including dismissal. So again, I provide you that as a reference to consider and think about. But we're just not interested in predetermining, and we're not interested in predetermining discipline associated with that particular thing.
I
But
think-
this, oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I think we had a lot of this discussion last time, and we understand that the way we were going about this 21.8 was not to your liking, and I understand that, and I understand the limitations you guys have. Now, I did ask you last time, I said, if you're not okay with the system we've gone through to prevent discrimination, to go through and try to think of your own processes to go through that would work. And I'm not seeing any of that on here, because you said you would look and see if there were other avenues, and I'm just seeing it crossed out with no attempt to kind of find those other avenues. Are there other avenues that you have looked into to kind of prevent this discrimination? Because that's our end goal, is preventing discrimination.
So here's what I would say. I think that our situation is the fact that we believe that we have enough discrimination language otherwise in the contract that if you feel someone's being discriminated against, there's a way to deal with it. Preliminarily determining that we're not going to discipline somebody for violating something that is not only a requirement and regulation of the university, but is also written in a BOG regulation, to predetermine how we're going to discipline or not someone is not a process for preventing discrimination, in our opinion.
We can't, we're prohibited in the BOG regulation
Yeah.
from doing anything
Right, but
that limits
but
that.
our argument is that the law and the issue itself is discriminatory, like in the actual
Yeah,
law itself, so
that's-
we're trying to limit it,
That's
not really.
nothing that we can address
Yeah.
through the CBA though.
Right.
I wanna point out that it says the established disciplinary procedures which must include disciplinary action up to and
Yeah.
including dismissal, so it
Right.
implies.
Has to include dismissal as an option.
As like a tier, yes, but the way we first wrote it, where it could be written reprimand forever, would violate that, but on the first offense, would not necessarily establish a whole procedure that does not include something up to dismissal. The procedure could be the first time, it's a written reprimand, the second time, it's dismissal.
What if
or-
there's only one time?
That the procedure
Then-
would still involve up to dismissal.
But no, it doesn't, because it's only reprimand.
Right.
It doesn't say every instance must include disciplinary action up to and including dismissal. The word using up to
Must.
implies that the procedure has several different possibilities and one of them needs to be dismissal.
It
Right,
doesn't say
that means
repeatedly.
that, what means
That
that
means it
the
should be an option.
The BOG regulation means if somebody violates that law, then we have to have dismissal has to be on the table. Whether it's their first time or
Each
fifth time.
instance,
So because
That's
of,
what this says.
because
I
of the
do
purpose.
not see that in there.
That's what the language says.
It
This
says,
doesn't specify
The
between
BOG
first time or
regulation is
fifth. time.
Exactly what they wrote. in
right,
there, yeah.
but it
Must
says
include-
that the established disciplinary procedures, which must include, it doesn't say this procedure. The procedure could talk about like a progressive discipline.
Can we, ask,
Build it
like,
in.
what are the established disciplinary procedures?
That would be.
It's what's outlined here.
Yes,
What- so
with-
that's out there.
And this means that discipline has to be something that
Right.
could be imposed upon somebody who violates that.
So,
And what you're essentially proposing is a new disciplinary procedure that ends at reprimand for a first-time offender of this act. And that would be in violation of BOG regulation.
We'll think about it.
That's it.
okay, and, okay. Alright, I see, because you're saying, because our progressive disciplinary actions does include termination or dismissal, and since the regulation says up to and including dismissal, you want to keep that.
Right.
Okay.
The same process and procedure for all the other disciplinary violations. If it said repeatedly, if it said university employees who repeatedly violate, then
Right.
that would be different, but that's
Yeah.
not what it says. It just says employees who violate. So.
Separate from this, but related. Every time we get in a discussion about how sticky it is to try to like predetermine punishments and stuff, we ask about what are you planning to counter propose on the article where we propose increasing bathroom access to limit these type of things on the front end rather than try to control them on the back end.
Right.
So are you able to expound on that? Have you thought more about that?
We actually have thought more about that, and we actually got some guidance that we're just not interested in bargaining the facilities. Like facilities, control the facilities, the outlay of the facilities, that is not, it's not a bargainable topic that we're just not interested in entering. Did I use the right terminology?
Well, it's a management,
It's a
management of our facilities is not.
It's an
mandatory, so we
exclusive
can-
management, right? It's
yeah.
not subject to bargaining. So we're not gonna bargain whether or not we're gonna have to build a building a certain way irrespective of what it specifically contains.
Yes, but the availability of a bathroom that you can go to is like, well, part of like our employment
Yeah,
condition.
I mean, part of the language we were proposing last time also included,
Not having to drive like a mile.
yeah,
to
and
get
like
to the
including like
bathroom.
allowing people like having like their office moved to somewhere closer if there's no, I don't know, I don't remember the exact language, but I know in our proposals, we're going back and forth, included
We
language.
had multiple ways of dealing with
Yeah.
that situation.
Right,
We're
not just
still-
building a new
that's
building
article-
It's not saying, we're not saying you have to build a new building.
Right.
or
With
new
Yeah,
bathrooms.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which one, which article is that?
Article 4, I think.
Uh,
No, it's
It
Or-
dis-
might have
I'm
been
sorry, not Article 4,
discrimination.
Article
Discrimination on-
7,
Yeah,
we're
it
still
was
looking at
12.
that article.
Okay.
so-
We have.
It's one of them.
So-
Yeah.
One of
It's not one of the ones that we're bringing today, so,
Yeah, no,
so, I
okay.
mean, I hear what you're saying.
It's
and-
13.
13,
Yeah, we're not
okay.
bringing 13.
Okay,
Add them all together.
Cause that's where a lot of that stuff, the other part of it was.
okay,
It's just that if we had assurances that things were being covered more so on the front end, then it would be
This would
easier
even
to
if that's an
set
issue.
the lack of ability to control on the back end, but every time we try to like prevent or minimize this discrimination, we keep running up against like, oh, we can't talk about that, or it's impossible, or whatever, and that's it's hard. It is very much in our, like, a primary concern of ours to limit this discrimination from occurring. We need an avenue.
All right, well, we can have more of that conversation when we bring our calendar to 13, which we do not have today.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, we're ready to move on to 22.
Right.
Again, this is multiple pages, so. I figured you'd get it eventually.
Blanking.
All right, okay. 20, this one, I don't know why, this one came in a weird format when I got it, because I actually overwrote the ones that you guys gave me, so I know the format is funky, I'm not sure why. And there's a bunch of lines on the side, those were there on the one I got from you, but it also had to do an auto recovery of the document, it said there was a problem with the document, so I'm not sure what the edits are that it's identifying on the left margin, I emailed it back to you, you're welcome to explore it. Because I didn't have any real changes up there, but it's showing that there's changes. I don't know what they are.
Could be the numbering.
Yeah, maybe
It's,
that's what-
I don't know.
Could be.
We're ready to go down to 22.9, which is on page 2, formal grievance procedure. Step 1, we are willing to go to 45 on that. I think in 22.9 E, that was just inserting the word the, it shows the whole, and that was your catch, that wasn't our catch. Down to 22.11, we were willing to sort of split the difference and have that deadline go out to 35 from the 25. So you'd ask for 20 more days. We're willing to accept 10 of those in terms of extending that. And then down to, so there's another edit here, 22.18, what I crossed out in A, which is, it should be in the copy I emailed you, but I missed it before I printed it. That is the same exact sentence that appears as the first sentence in 22.18. I think we actually
Yeah,
talked about
we
that
talked
last
about
time.
this, and so I think we just both forgot to
We
delete
just
that.
forgot to delete it, and then I printed it again before I forgot to delete it, so
Mhm.
that's what that is showing. And like I said, the one I emailed you, it should be removed.
Okay.
The only thing, this green otherwise was your language. The only thing that we removed was in B, that the initial such request shall be granted. And one of the reasons that we did that is because we were willing to concede the extension of the deadlines themselves. So, to say that in addition to the extension, then you get another automatic 15-day extension at each step, we don't think that's necessary. Down to the retroactivity portion, we're willing to have the 22.2 go to match the extension of what is actually in step one. To the extended 45-day limit, but not all the way out to 120 days. And then if you go down to 22.24, which I know there's two of them and I don't know why. 22.24, the first one, A, is actually your language, and we didn't have any change to that. We think that's acceptable. 22.14, the second one, we made an adjustment, which is in red, which is upon resolution of the grievance, the party shall implement the remedy you had within 7 days. And I think unfortunately it's just not realistic in some respects. So we would say as soon as practicable and within 30 days. So it has to meet both of those conditions. In other words, we have to do it as quickly as we possibly can, and that can't be any longer than 30 days. So
Does practicable have like a precise definition? I'm asking out of curiosity.
I don't think so. I mean, again, it's kind of like we were talking before last time about the reasonable person standard. I mean, it's meant to be, like, for example, sometimes you'll see in contracts, it will say, every effort. Well, if you say that every effort has to be taken, well, if you take literally every effort, then you can get almost anything done in whatever time period you identify. So what it's basically saying is within the reasonable confines of the operation of the university, if you try to get this done quickly, how quickly can you effectively get it done? And the thing that stuck out in my mind as I prepared this response and as we talked about it was sometimes it has to do with pay cycles and pay periods. Like, for example, if it involves somebody getting paid, it's not really realistic that we may be able to fix the entirety of a pay issue within 7 days, depending on the way that the pay periods fall. So that was one of the things that was coming to my mind as we were doing this. Sometimes it just cannot, without fundamentally changing the systems and the operations of the way that we do things, 7 days sometimes just isn't realistic. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do it, and it doesn't mean we don't have to do it quickly. We just may not be able to get it done within exactly 7 days. And in such a case that it would be part of an award, I doubt that the arbitrator, although it's possible, would be so thoughtful as to say you have 38 days or you have 42 days or you have 60 days to do this. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that would probably be, it may be part of the award, but it's probably unlikely.
I usually look at the agreement
Yeah.
to see what the agreement says.
So,
I can see the logic there. Obviously, we'll want our grievance team to look over this.
sure.
Yeah.
Understandable. All right, well, that only took about 50 minutes, sorry. I mean, but that we did get through 6, so not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for most of them, we don't have too much disagreement.
I think we're hopefully,
Yeah.
I think that's our goal is some of these that we're pretty close on, like, let's go ahead and hopefully you saw, we tried to identify those things that we're still sort of staying, like, which one of these things, let's look at some of the stuff that we can probably say yes to. Let's get some of these articles across the finish line. Let's see where we can make some concessions, which, we feel like we can actually make happen, and let's get some of this signed off.
So we did have one proposal. Who?
It's 16.
Yeah.
We all have that still.
I don't have that.
I don't remember who grabbed it from last.
Did I not pass them out?
I don't think you passed it out last time. No.
Yeah, but they were with the stack of papers we had.
Do we have
Yeah, we have
an
the
electronic
second
copy?
We do, yeah. It was emailed to you all last week if you still
From
have
Hannah.
that, or I can just forward it again.
Mm.
You want to put it up on the thing?
I have it, yeah. But yeah, we might not have physical copies.
Article 16. Sorry. I thought I needed.
My office is freezing and so I've been wearing my jacket when I walked across campus and I was like, whoa.
Hot in my office and then now
It's no longer.
Yeah. There was a 37-degree swing at my house yesterday.
It was what?
37-degree swing at my house yesterday,
I went to
from the time I woke
Tallahassee
up.
for a lacrosse game last night. It was
Good old
really
Florida
chilly.
weather.
Was it?
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
what's happening?
painful.
It's gonna rain. It's gonna supposed to rain all weekend.
Whoever was working on this.
I did some of it and some of it. So scroll up to the very top. And one thing I wanted to mention is, why do we have this memorandum of understanding on a lot of our articles? It's not part of our CBA. We sometimes end up signing a memorandum of understanding between us two, but like.
It's more like
articles aren't.
TAing.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that we want each article to stand alone as being TA'd. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily 100% necessary to have it on there. Often, I mean, it's something that I've used in the past because then that particular agreement stands on its own. You're gonna combine all those, they're gonna go up for ratification. And I know it's a demonstration, the fact that the bargaining teams have met, they've worked together on these things. They've agreed that these should be what we're gonna bring forward for ratification. I mean, whether or not legally do those exact words have to appear on every page. I think the process of ratification is probably more important than whether or not it says that on every page.
Yeah.
And that's what's signed.
Yeah, and it has to be signed.
Half of them have it and half of them do. So,
Well, I think I put it on all the ones that we had put across. I mean,
I know
don't-
some of the
don't-
ones,
I don't think it's a
because of
deal
the
breaker.
formatting, like trying to copy it from the contract, I just started a new document and I didn't include that in
I
there
don't know,
yet.
like, I don't think it's. I
Well,
don't-
if at the end of the day, we have it signed.
With it on there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was honestly
Yeah.
curious why it was on there. Okay, so anyway, the first change comes with release time, at 16.4. And I did move employees must remain students in good standing to the front, just to get that out of the way at first, but the main addition is that second point. And I'll give you a second to read that. Been a longstanding issue where the people who are interested in filling the release time are become not interested or are not like, available to fill it after all. And we believe that, like, for several years now, we have not been able to use the amount of FTE that our contract gives us, and I believe that this, this addition would allow us to actually make use of the FTE units of release time that we are given in the contract. Whereas historically, without a provision like this, we simply are not ending up getting to use the FTE in the first place.
Comments?
I understand what it says.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Because, if there's like, if you're thinking in terms of like, that's not the right like administrative way to do what you wanna do, but it could work a different way or anything. If you have any like ideas like that, I'd be interested to hear them. I kind of imagined what I thought could work and proposed it, but if there's something I don't know about where it would work a better way, a different way, we're open to hearing your opinion on that.
I mean, I think effectively what you're asking for is the right to appoint employees. I mean, that's effectively what you're asking. You're asking for the right to primarily, to serve as the primary appointment of an employee is what you're doing, to create an employment out of a student.
That would be the end result. Obviously, that's not the exact thing that we're asking for. Cause to ask for that exactly would be not our place.
But they haven't been offered a GA position from their department, right?
In this case, no, right, so like it would be a provision where hopefully UF would be agreeing to like offer the appointment. And then immediately release that appointment to GAU. But ultimately, UF would be the one offering the appointment, not GAU. GAU is not asking for the right to actually formally offer an appointment. They're asking for, or we're asking for UF to agree in this specific situation to do that so that they could release it.
It could also be a way for departments who potentially don't have the funds for a TA or RA position, but they want a specific graduate student to have an appointment. They could say, hey, well, we'll give you a nominal appointment and then you can become an RT or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that's
Exactly.
typical. I mean, but people who've been in that situation have often been in that kind of situation.
We've definitely seen people who applied and we interviewed and found out during the interview that that was an issue that we couldn't go forward with.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I just don't even know. I mean, I don't know who their appointment would be with.
Released time.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
That's a whole, to me, it's not released. You're not being released from an appointment because the person never had one. And so I think it's something else then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Well, they would be
That's-
released from this nominal.
Yeah,
it's effectively serving as their primary appointment.
Right, which, yeah.
I mean,
I
we
just
can,
don't-
we can call it semantically that it's not that, but I mean, that's practically, that's what the ask is.
and that's why I'm saying if you feel like there's a way to accomplish what we're trying to get at here through a different like administrative kind of back end, or if there's a different way to like conceptualize it, but accomplish a similar thing. Ultimately, as you've seen over the last couple of years, at least, we're just not using all the FTE that's allocated, and the issue that I'm trying to address there is a big reason why that is happening. So if there's any way in counter proposals, maybe you can reconceptualize or anything, we would be interested to hear if there's any way you think you could like address this, even if you don't like the specific way that I imagined it could be addressed.
Can you scroll down?
How far do you want me to scroll down?
Are there any other changes, I guess is,
Oh,
so
not to
there's-
this.
That's that's all of it.
It's
as
up here.
far as the, changes, I did move the standard release time up. Again,
Oh.
well,
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if a way to kind of like address your guys' concerns is to allow nominal like nominal offers from departments who may not have funds but would like to.
Kinda like what I was
Yeah,
saying.
like what you were saying, if it was from the department and not GAU, and that way they would have to consult with the department would have to approve of the release time condition. Since the issue usually is funds.
yeah, I could see that, like, if there's an agreement between the department and GAU that they would allow GAU to like release time or something in advance and then offer, the department is the one who offers the nominal. I don't know, I feel like we're taking a stab at the dark, in the dark here because you all understand like the administrative backdrop way better than us about like how this could work if it could work. So we can take stabs at the dark here, but also if you can imagine a way to solve this, we would also love to just hear your way. And I don't even mean to put you on the spot. I mean, when you counter propose 16, if you just give it some thought before then too.
All right, were there any other, I thought I saw maybe.
There are others.
So there's
Okay.
a couple others. So regarding office space. We have an office, it's great. We've got a lot of stuff in it. We don't have any parking at that office. So transporting stuff from that office is often huge difficulty. We need some way to have parking within the vicinity of our office. The rationale for 3 is we have 2 co-presidents and usually a single organizing chair. So those are the people who would most often be transporting things to and from the office.
Where's your office?
Yeah,
At the stadium.
Yeah.
and I think, were 16.6 and 16.7 in a prior proposal of this?
I think we've seen those before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those
Was
2
that-
additions,
was that
then the relief time
cross out?
and the
Yeah.
parking were the 2.
Yeah, they crossed out.
Major.
They want it. Yeah, so I think that may have been an adjustment in 16.7. I think you guys crossed out or as soon as practicable.
Oh, yes, I did.
I can, if that language stands, I think if we were to agree to that, you guys would basically be filing a procedural grievance pretty much every semester. Because there's departments that don't have their offices for all their GAs assigned 3 weeks before the semester starts.
Oh, that one's.
Oh, no, that's not for the office, that's for the orientation.
Oh, okay, sorry, I read them together. Got it.
We just can't get people assigned and committed to going to orientations if we don't have like 3 weeks before they occur.
Okay, the main graduate school orientation, we notified you in advance,
Right.
the calendar's already out. So are you talking about units or the graduate
Yeah.
school? Because you come to our TA orientation and our new graduate student orientation.
Right.
And we have you in the module.
That one, we get notified
Okay.
super early.
Yeah.
That one's easy to cover. We're talking
We're talking about
about
the
all
department.
Because we don't
orientations that
need,
involve
yeah,
that.
that, we have no handle on that, that's.
I think that's why we had
individual
the-
departments,
That's
that's-
why we included that as soon as practical.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any, as of right now, I don't think there's any centralized communication, like collection mechanism. We would have to create a way to even collect it, because everyone kind of does their own thing.
that's it.
All right, we'll talk about it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, those are the 2 main things.
And you sent this to us?
Yes, last
Okay.
week.
Yeah.
Would you like me to bump it back? to the
No, if
top?
you sent it, if it was in there, then I'll be able to get it.
So, Austin, were there other, things that we needed to clarify?
I think we've got all of it. You had something you wanted to talk about, in regards to housing.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So I wasn't here that time when
Yeah.
you, counter proposed and, we forgot to record that meeting. So I just wanted to hear from you guys, in person.
Sure.
What your position was about the housing article and.
Yeah, so we spent quite a bit of time going back into the case and also at the situation and the comparison of the situation you cited to the one that you guys have.
Right,
And I think there's several overwhelming components, and we actually verified our interpretation of the case with one of the people that was actually involved in the opinion and the decision. Who-
What's the name of this person?
Sure.
Well, I can tell you, I'm just trying, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to do your own research on, I don't have to divulge his name to you.
There's some attorney. client
There's
privilege involved. That's why
yeah.
I'm-
We're allowed to consult with attorneys.
Yeah.
So you talked to one of the attorneys who was involved.
We consulted an attorney on the case.
Who was involved in that particular.
Yes. And a couple of the factors that I think that you guys left out in your presentation was, one, prior to the union representing the physicians, they had a pre-existing condition for housing to be supplied by the employer. So it was a pre-existing condition. Two,
Sorry, prior to the union,
so before the union even represented the employees, they already had individual contracts to be supplied housing. Two, the case centered around the employer unilaterally taking that housing away and not bargaining that unilateral change with the union. It wasn't about not supplying housing, it was about the way in which they removed the housing and what they said, at least, and like I said, please read the case. Basically, the employer cited, look, we're gonna go by the condition of the contracts we had in advance before you guys represented them. And so one of the arguments that the union was making, and I don't want to put words in their mouth because I wasn't in the room, but when I read the case, the union was saying, well, look, you can't use the terms and conditions of their pre-existing contracts because we now represent these employees. And then the third component was, as part of their job, those people, one of the reasons the housing existed was because those people were expected to basically be in proximity of the delivery of services during the middle of the night because they were providing emergency services to people. It was, it was physicians working basically in an ER. So I think when you consider all those things together, that was the nexus of what all contributed to it having to be bargained. It wasn't just, you have to bargain housing.
well, I did read the case, before, and, there is the main, and we will present a counter proposal about
Okay.
this, and, the main takeaway from PERC's guidelines on scope of bargaining is not about the specifics of that case. It's about worksite housing being a mandatory subject of bargaining. So from my perspective,
When you say perks guidelines, do you mean from the order?
they have like
You mean the handbook?
yeah. the handbook,
Okay, yeah,
right.
the order is with the law.
And the order has a specific line basically to that effect.
Right,
Yeah.
which refers to another prior order, which is also consistent with the fact that the housing is essentially considered part of compensation because they're being provided with the housing as part of their position.
I will have to, okay, so your argument here is that order is in line with a previous order.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, it cites other orders.
Uh-huh.
There's another order it cites, I think, regarding like park rangers who had an issue with
Mhm.
electricity or like some kind
Yeah.
of utilities, and that's because they're park rangers, they're living there
Right.
because they're living in the park and their
Sure.
job is to,
Yeah,
graduate housing at the university is provided to graduate students. It is not, so it is your student status, which is what gives you the ability to live in graduate student housing. It is not your employment status as a graduate assistant. So it is not considered worksite housing because it's not like you're not required to live in graduate housing in order to be a graduate assistant. Whereas those physicians and the park rangers are required to live in that housing in order to perform their jobs. And their that's essentially considered part of their compensation. Now, if we were giving everybody, as part of being a GA, you get to live, for free in this apartment, like graduate student, then that might be potentially a different way to look at it, but that's not the way it works at the university with our graduate student housing.
so I mean, I can tell you, practically speaking, many people do have to come to the campus to deal with experiments at all times of the day, even night. And so in many respects, they actually do have to like kind of.
They don't have to, that's not part of your job description, you do not have to live in.
The
graduate student
experiment
housing.
may require not that you live there, but.
Well, that's what I'm
but,
saying,
yeah.
like, if
But-
you're not
but-
required to live. in
And this
graduate
is something
student
that we didn't actually even address in our first proposal, is that there's lots of graduate assistants who work at research and extension centers. And in those can be very remote. And some of those do actually have housing. But in many cases, the graduate assistants are not able to have access to that. Even though it would actually be very beneficial, both in terms of their work, they have to actually be in this remote location for their work. and just in terms of practicality for their own lives. So I do think that there are, for those people especially, a lot of similarities to the kind of park ranger type of situation, although it is not it's like not a prior, already existing part of their life.
But I guess I just don't understand how it can at all be like the park ranger situation if they're not being required to live there to do their work. I understand it would be, what you're essentially, you're saying the opposite. It would be more convenient if they could live there to do their work.
Yeah, right.
But the fact of the matter is, you're not required to live there to be a graduate assistant. Therefore, it's not considered part of your compensation. Therefore, it is not a mandatory subject to bargaining.
Does worksite housing mean that you have to live there?
That is how those orders, that is what, when you read those orders, that is what they're saying.
Okay, I mean, I would like to, yeah, I will review what those orders said, but if there's like kind of, specific things that you want to quote from them, look at, that.
I mean, you're welcome. I'm sharing with you right now, like,
Okay.
this is our position. We're not bargaining housing as a mandatory subject of housing because
Mhm.
it is not. And that's our position.
I understand that. Yeah, okay, thank you for explaining that. We will come back to you for the notes. Okay, did we have any other things that we needed to clarify, Austin?
No, that we had notes for.
I was a little late. Did you check on the other things at the front?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, we checked on both of those things.
Yep. Yeah, so within the next week, we should hopefully have that data, and within the next 1 to 2 weeks, hopefully, we should have that information set out about the outside works.
Yeah, at least be elevated to
Yeah.
the next level, so
Or elevated, yeah.
to be sent out.
So I did say at the beginning of the meeting that I wanted to discuss how the last bargaining session ended. I obviously I wasn't here, but I did watch the video and there's many things that concern me about how that specific meeting ended. And I think, we're gonna have another pass at the workload article. And there's also survey data that we I don't think was presented at the last meeting, but so I don't want to necessarily get bogged down in the specifics of that article. But I do think that there is kind of one major kind of point that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we can't really have any kind of reasonable discussion about workload. And that really just boils down to a single question. Does the university consider us working the hours of our contract to be a work stoppage?
No,
Okay, so at the end of last meeting, you basically, when Jacob suggested that we would work 20 hours as is written in our contract, you called that a work stoppage.
that's not all he said.
You said that by Jacob saying those words, that he was considering a work stoppage.
I asked him, it was a question, are you suggesting?
Yeah, and
A
he
work
said no,
stoppage.
and then you said, yes, that is what you were saying.
I'm pretty sure the
And then
phrase
you
was,
stormed out of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
a couple of things, you can characterize it however you'd like. You were given the option to present another article, and I think the phrase was, there's only 4 minutes left, we're not going to. Yes, we did leave because I didn't think it was productive for us to have that particular conversation in a bargaining session. Frankly, I don't think it's to your advantage because the phrase that was used, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the video playing, is
Mhm.
the operation of the university would not permit, I can't remember exactly the exact phrase, but if we only did this, then the university would suffer. I don't think it's to your advantage and to have that conversation in a bargaining session. I don't think that's what we're here to do.
No, I don't think that that's what we're here to do, but the fact of the matter is that, we think that it's in our common interest to arrive at a distinction, like a well-defined distinction between academic work and our GA work, right? That is why, that is the reason why we have to have a bargaining session about that article. Right? So by suggesting, I mean, what Jacob was speaking to was the fact that in reality, people work much more than the hours in their contract. Therefore, if people were to only work exactly what it says in their contract, would the university consider that to be a work stoppage?
And I said, no.
Okay, so I think in that case, when basically, I mean, I think, it's fair, I think you have a fair criticism, maybe Jacob, should not have said that, he should have been more artful in making his point. But the reality is, saying that we will only work 20 hours is not a work stoppage, and then you insinuated that that's what he was trying to do. And then, essentially, said that is the reason that, okay, well, the meeting's over, we're leaving. And I don't think that that's, an acceptable way to conduct bargaining. We can't put words in our mouth and then use that as an excuse to leave the meeting. So
What additional substantive work were we going to accomplish in the last 3.5 minutes?
I think it has more to do with, the tone that you use, the, abruptness, that with which, the meeting was ended. Most important, you as a person who deals with grievances and things like, for example, a workload issue. You insinuate at the bargaining table that someone who only works the hours of their contract, like doing so is contemplating a work stoppage. That has a chilling effect on people who might actually be suffering from, a workload issue and might actually have to bring it to you. So I think it is also incumbent on you to not exaggerate things and not blow things out of proportion just so that no more discussion is to be had on that topic. And honestly, and I'm glad that you've at least today been very categorical in saying that no, you don't consider that to be a work stoppage, because honestly, that was my biggest issue. Because if your answer had been anything else, then it would be really difficult to have a reasonable conversation on it. So, I'm glad that we've established that you don't think that. And, we will be bringing, another proposal on that article. Because as I said, we think that it's in both of our interests, right? I mean, it's already in the current contract language that there should be a distinction from academic work. But in reality,
That's
I
in,
don't think
that's in,
so.
that's in
They added
proposed,
that
that's
to the
proposed.
first
It's not
proposal
CCL.
that opened this
Okay.
article.
Yeah, that's what.
okay,
Yeah.
so, okay, even better. I mean, you already recognize that there has to be a distinction, right? And we do too. And so I think, bargaining like coming to an agreement is not helped by having outbursts like that. And I also think that there's on our part, a duty not to get into circular arguments and not to, continuously push points that have been already gone over. But yeah, I was really quite, disappointed with how that, last, meeting ended. And I really hope that doesn't happen again.
I appreciate you acknowledging that it goes both ways.
Sure,
Because we've sat at this table before and been berated and had words put in our mouths as well.
right.
So I just want to acknowledge that, it goes both ways. I wasn't at the meeting, at the end of the meeting either. But, we can all work together, and I think we've been working together really well
I agree.
over the past however months since we've done open book. And
Mhm.
I think we should continue to focus on that and
Agreed.
move forward. So,
Agreed. And I remember, at the beginning of last semester, you, Patrick, had taken issue with, our comms team having, said something in a post that wasn't quite right. That was honestly mainly due to a miscommunication, between our teams. That was like not meant to be on purpose. Whereas like here, this was done like in a bargaining session, right in front of me. So I really just hope that's not like how we conduct ourselves in the future. And, I do think that there's a lot of common ground, even though, we have different perspectives. We both have an interest in, coming to an agreement on defining that distinction. So, I really hope that we don't get into that kind of argument then.
I think we have.
Okay.
Are we good?
I think we're good.
All right.
And thank you. Do we want to do debrief? Are there people on the phone?
Yeah, we've got a couple people in the chat. We can